Today. My name is Vida Tobe, and I will be presenting with John Arnold today. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic drastically altered the landscape of education, forcing schools to transition to remote learning almost overnight. Today, I am excited to present our project proposal titled Pandemic Related Impact on Schools and Districts Enrollment Insights from the COVID-19 Pandemic. Our presentation will first unfold by stating the rationale behind choosing this project, share with you the research questions or tasks to be solved, highlight the data sets and samples we intend to use, sample data visualizations and identify target users, share with you some information needed by users, and finally, wrap it all up with a concluding statement. The unexpected shift to remote learning brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic had a profound impact on the educational landscape. Students faced significant disruptions affecting their learning experiences, academic performance, levels of engagement, and overall mental well-being. This project is designed to conduct a thorough investigation into how these effects manifested across different schools and districts. Our aim is to analyze how this sudden shift has affected students' academic achievements, engagement levels, and mental health. The findings from this project will help make informed decisions about resource allocation, policy development, and educational strategies that prioritize students' success and well-being during times of crisis. In relation to the key tasks we need to address, the focus is on three core areas impacted by remote learning, and that's academic performance, engagement levels, and mental health. For academic performance, we need to understand how remote learning has affected students' performance as compared to traditional in-person settings. So we are seeking to answer questions like, has it improved, declined, or stayed the same? Second, it's crucial to investigate how students' engagement varies between online and face-to-face learning environments. So we want to answer questions like, are students more or less engaged, and what factors contribute to these differences? Finally, the mental health implications of remote learning for students will be examined, and we want to find out the potential benefits and drawbacks and how we can best support students' well-being in this new environment. As we delve into our analysis, we will be utilizing three key data sets that will provide a solid foundation for our research project. First, we will examine students' performance data. This data will help us understand how students' academic achievements were affected by the transition to remote learning. We will source this data from organizations like the National Center for Education Statistics and various state education department reports. Next, we will leverage surveys on students' engagement and experience. These surveys provide critical insights into how students and teachers experience remote learning, including their levels of engagement and the challenges they face. This data will be drawn from the Education Week Research Center and local school district surveys, ensuring that we have a comprehensive understanding from multiple perspectives. We will also incorporate mental health data to enrich our analysis. This data um, will talk about the understanding of the psychological implications of the shift to remote learning. We will look at data that reflect students' mental health, including prevalence rates of anxiety, depression, and the general well-being during the pandemic. So sources for this data will include surveys conducted by the National Institute of Mental Health and studies from educational and psychological associations. Together, these data sets will enable us to answer our key research questions and draw meaningful conclusions. Moving on to data sources, we would employ the use of standardized test scores. This includes data from assessments like the ACT and CAT. The information is organized at a school or district level, giving us a broader view. We would also use enrollment or graduation rates. And similar to the test scores, we can analyze these rates at the school and district level. On the right side of the slide, we can see a small snapshot of what the tables would look like. The first table represents an Excel sheet of the diversity demographics in a local educational agency district. And the second is a snapshot of graduation rates. We can use these data sources to perform comprehensive data analysis. At this point, I would hand over the baton to John to proceed with the other aspects of the presentation.
The purpose of our project and visualization is to serve three key groups: parents and teachers, researchers, and policymakers. For parents and teachers, this tool provides a clear and interactive way to evaluate school and district performance based on ACT and SAT scores and graduation rates. Parents can use this data to make informed decisions about where to enroll their children, while teachers can identify trends and areas for improvement within their schools. Researchers benefit from access to structured data that allows them to analyze educational trends, disparities, and the effectiveness of various academic programs. This insight can drive further studies on factors influencing student success. Finally, policymakers can use these insights to shape education policies, allocate funding, and implement targeted interventions to improve student outcomes across Arkansas. By making this data accessible and easy to interpret, our visualization empowers these groups to make data-driven decisions that enhance educational opportunities statewide. Our visualization provides insight into how Arkansas's schools and districts performed with remote learning at the start and end of the COVID-19 pandemic. By examining key metrics like ACT scores and graduation rates, users can identify which schools adapted most effectively. Parents and teachers can use this information to understand the impact of remote learning on student success. Researchers can analyze trends to explore factors that contributed to better performance. Policymakers can use these insights to guide future decisions on digital learning initiatives and resource allocation. Users can select schools or districts to compare performance over time, revealing disparities or success stories. The data helps highlight patterns that may inform best practices for future remote learning strategies. With this visualization, we aim to provide a clear, data-driven perspective on how schools navigated one of the most challenging periods in modern education. To evaluate how well Arkansas schools adapted to remote learning during COVID-19, we use graduation rates and ACT/SAT test scores as key performance indicators. By analyzing these metrics at both the beginning and end of the pandemic, we can assess changes in student outcomes over time. Graduation rates reflect overall student success and retention, showing whether schools effectively supported students through remote learning challenges. A stable or increasing graduation rate suggests that a school adapted well, while a decline may indicate struggles with engagement or instruction quality. ACT and SAT test scores provide insight into academic performance and college readiness. If scores remain steady or improved, it suggests that schools successfully maintain instructional quality despite the shift to remote learning. By comparing these metrics across schools and districts, we can identify which institutions implemented the most effective strategies, helping educators and policymakers make informed decisions for future remote learning initiatives. In summary, Our project explores how remote learning during COVID-19 impacted Arkansas schools and districts by analyzing key performance indicators, graduation rates, and ACT, SAT test scores. The sudden shift to online instruction presented unprecedented challenges for students, educators, and administrators. These challenges affected not only academic performance, but also engagement, enrollment, and overall student well-being. By examining how schools maintain graduation rates and academic achievement, we can identify which institutions were best equipped to handle the transition. Schools that showed resilience in these areas likely had strong digital infrastructure, effective teaching strategies, and robust student support systems. On the other hand, schools that experienced declines may reveal areas where additional resources or policy changes are needed. This visualization serves as a valuable tool for parents, educators, researchers, and policymakers. Parents can use the insights to choose schools best prepared for future disruptions. Educators can learn from high-performing schools to refine remote learning strategies. Researchers can analyze trends to understand the broader impact of remote education, and policymakers can use the data to make informed decisions about future investments in digital learning. Ultimately, this project is about preparation and improvement. By understanding which schools adapted well and which struggled, we can better prepare for future educational disruptions, whether it's another pandemic or another unforeseen challenge. Having a roadmap for effective remote learning ensures that students continue to receive a high quality education no matter the circumstances. Thank you for your time. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Okay, so as I told other teams, the project ends in May. So there is nothing past May. What we see in the project, what we can do with the project in May, it is in May. In other words, we don't assume, for example, you mentioned they have good digital strategies. Do you have any data to look at? If it's not in there, it's not in there. So if you have the data for digital strategies or whatever policy that you support, you have the data that would give you some numbers for the amount of support that the school has, whatever number that is. If it's in the project, it's in the project, but it can be brought from the outside. So if you either have it or you don't, and it needs to be by May, and that's it. So we can't look past that date. So can we tell if the digital strategy worked by May if you have the data? If you don't have the data, then that's not part of this project. So only the data, only what's seen in your visualizations is what counts. We cannot assume that other information is going to be brought or other knowledge is going to be brought in from the outside later. So that's for everyone. So keep that in mind. That's kind of what I mean that it ends in May. We're not going to bring anything else. And even if you have 20% of data and we need we have 90% of data, you assume there's been a 10% that somebody brings in their pocket and looks at this visualization. So what we see in the visualization, and that's for all the teams, not only for this one, what we see in the visualization in May is what this project is about. It can be more than that. So be very careful with the way you phrase what you're doing. Another thing here, parents, researchers, policymakers, as I said, I'm not looking for something that is very general. If your project can be used for all these three things, three different audiences, then I will consider the weakest one. What is the weakest? So pick the one that's stronger and stay with it. I'm not looking for three projects, one for parents and teacher, one for researcher, one for policymakers. I'm looking for one project that can help one of these audiences the best. And I want you to think very critically, which one you pick the one. If all of three can be helped, no problem. But they all have to be able, that means that all these three groups really need a common thing to do. And what is that common thing? Maybe there is something like that. If you know it, that's fine. And go ahead with it. I don't mind having three. What I'm saying is it needs to be in exactly the same thing for all three. Otherwise, it's three different projects that you're considering. So be very specific, and focusing on one group or the other may help. You kind of narrow down the task. I don't know, looking at it, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but looking at it, the mental health data looks like it's a little bit out of place. And it's going to be really hard to, if you have that data at the district level, because all the other data that I've seen examples of are at the school level or school district level. Do you have mental data at school level? If you have it, fine. If not, maybe drop it. Because why look at, okay, we don't look at mental health data, but maybe the performance is also affected by economics factors, access to internet, how rural the community is versus, and again, there's a lot of other things. Why pick only mental health? And if you have the data, that's fine. But if you don't, I would consider taking it out. Student engagement and experience, student performance, I can see these being related. This one seems a little bit out of the realm of these other two. But if you see it and if you have the data, and I don't have a problem with using, I just want to point that out. And you need something to glue them. So basically, if you have mental data, and that means there's something going on the health factor. So your whole problem glue will be, how the health information, mental health reaction and in COVID, or mental health reaction and how that affects performance and engagement. Or maybe the engagement affects mental health. That's another way. But I don't know how you would. There's a lot there that you could do. It's just I'm worried that you might not have the data, especially at that granular level of a school district. And that's pretty much all I have. I kind of made mental notes today. I didn't put it on note. I usually kind of write it down on notepad, but I think that's all. So make sure you have the thing and you put your problem in the right format there. And then the audience is going to be really important. If you keep all three of them, then what is common between all three? That's what your project is doing. If you just focus on one and focus only on that one and keep on going.